Jake Porter knelt beside the water treatment system, checking the digital readout for what felt like the 100th time that day. The afternoon sun beat down on his neck, and he could feel the sweat pooling under his work shirt. Lake Meridian stretched out before him, its surface glittering in the harsh light of Kepler 442b's twin suns. 3 years of hard work had gone into creating this lake, and finally, it was holding water properly. He stood up and stretched, his back popping. The mining colony had come a long way since he'd arrived. Back then, it was just prefab shelters and dust. Now they had actual buildings, paved roads, and this beautiful lake that would supply water to 5,000 residents, human and alien alike. Jake allowed himself a small smile. This was his project. His baby. The dam outlet gurgled steadily nearby, right on schedule. Everything was running perfectly. He made a note on his datapad and turned to head back to the equipment shed. That's when he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Thrashing. Violent, desperate thrashing in the water. Jake spun around, his datapad forgotten. Near the dam outlet, maybe 30 feet from shore, something large was struggling in the water. The spray made it hard to see clearly, but then a massive shape broke the surface and Jake's stomach dropped. A Felkari. The creature was huge, easily 8 feet of pure muscle and fur, with distinctive midnight blue spots scattered across silver fur that now clung wet to its body. Its long tail whipped frantically, creating more spray. Even from this distance, Jake could see the panic in its movements. It was drowning. Jake looked around quickly. A dozen workers had stopped what they were doing, standing frozen on the shoreline. Humans, Trellics, even a couple of Borean traders. All just watching. Help her! Jake shouted, already running toward the water. Nobody moved. Of course they didn't. Everyone knew about the Felkari. Apex predators from the Andromeda sector. Lightning-fast reflexes. Claws that could slice through steel. Territorial and aggressive. There were stories, lots of stories, about what happened to people who got too close to a Felkari. Jake reached the water's edge and kicked off his boots. His hands were shaking as he pulled off his tool belt. "You're crazy, man," someone yelled from the crowd. "Let nature take its course." But Jake wasn't thinking about stories or statistics or danger. He was watching a living being drown 20 feet in front of him. A creature struggling for air, for life, for one more breath. He dove in. The cold water hit him like a punch. Lake Meridian might look pretty, but it was fed by underground glacial streams, and the temperature made his muscles clench. Jake forced himself to swim hard, his arms cutting through the water toward the struggling Felkari. The current from the dam outlet was stronger than he'd expected. It pulled at his legs, trying to drag him sideways. Jake adjusted his angle and pushed harder. His lungs were already burning from the cold and exertion. The Felkari saw him coming. Her 6 golden eyes, each the size of Jake's fist, locked onto him. For a second, she seemed to panic even more, thrashing harder. "It's okay." Jake gasped, knowing she probably couldn't understand him. "I'm trying to help." He reached her just as she went under again. Jake dove down, his eyes stinging in the murky water. His hand found fur, then a muscular shoulder. He grabbed on and kicked upward with everything he had. They broke the surface together. The Felkari's weight was incredible, like trying to lift a small car. Jake wrapped his arm across her chest, the way he'd been taught in lifeguard training 20 years ago, and started pulling her toward shore. That's when her claws came out. Pain exploded across Jake's forearm as razor-sharp claws raked his skin. He felt the warmth of his own blood mixing with the cold water. The Felkari was panicking, trying to climb him like a ladder, pushing him under in her desperation. Jake's head went under. Water rushed into his nose. He kicked hard, breaking the surface, coughing and sputtering. His arm was screaming in pain, but he didn't let go. He couldn't let go. "Stop fighting me," he yelled, tightening his grip. "I've got you." Maybe she understood his tone. Maybe she was just exhausted. Either way, the Felkari stopped thrashing quite so hard. Jake took advantage of the moment and swam backward, pulling her with him. His legs kicked steadily. His good arm burned with effort. The shore seemed impossibly far away. 10 feet. 5 feet. His feet touched mud. Jake planted his boots in the shallow water and heaved, dragging the massive alien toward solid ground. Other workers rushed forward now that the danger was mostly past, grabbing the Felkari's arms and pulling. Together they hauled her onto the muddy shore. She collapsed immediately, water streaming from her fur. Her chest barely moved. Jake dropped to his knees beside her, his own chest heaving. Blood dripped from the gashes on his forearm, but he ignored it. He placed his hands on her chest, found the sternum, and started compressions. He had no idea if Falcari biology was anything like human biology, but he had to try. "Come on," he muttered, pushing down hard. "Come on, breathe." The crowd had gathered around them now, silent and watching. Someone whispered that he was wasting his time. That Falcari were too different. Jake kept pushing. 30 compressions. He tilted her head back, checked her airway, and gave 2 rescue breaths into her alien mouth. The Falcari's body jerked. She coughed violently, lake water spewing from her mouth. Her 6 golden eyes rolled, then focused. She gasped, taking in huge lungfuls of air. Jake sat back, relief flooding through him. "You're okay. You're going to be okay." But then the Falcari did something completely unexpected. Something that made every drop of blood in Jake's body turn to ice. She rolled onto her side, still gasping, and lifted one shaking claw. She pointed back toward the water, toward the dam outlet where the current was strongest. And she made a sound that Jake had never heard before, a sound that bypassed all language and went straight to some primal part of his brain. It was the cry of a mother who'd lost her child. Jake's eyes snapped to the water. There, barely visible in the spray near the outlet, something small was struggling against the current. Something very small. "No, no, no," Jake muttered, his eyes following the Falcari's frantic gestures. His heart was still pounding from the first rescue, his arm still bleeding, but none of that mattered now. There. In the flooding drainage pipe near the dam outlet. Something small was thrashing weakly against the current, barely keeping above water. Something tiny. Jake's stomach twisted. A cub. There was a cub in the water. The adult Falcari tried to stand, her powerful legs shaking beneath her. She took one stumbling step toward the water before collapsing back onto the mud. Her golden eyes found Jake's again, and he saw something in them that transcended species. Pure, desperate fear. The kind of fear only a parent knows. She couldn't save her baby. But maybe he could. Jake was already moving. His legs felt like rubber, his lungs still burned from the first rescue, but he forced himself to run back toward the water. Someone grabbed his shoulder. "Don't be stupid." It was Tommy, one of the human engineers. "You barely made it out the first time." Jake shrugged him off. "There's a kid in there." "It's not a kid, it's a Falcari." "It's a baby," Jake said, and dove back into the freezing water. The cold hit him even harder this time. His muscles protested, already exhausted from hauling the mother to shore. But Jake swam hard toward the drainage pipe, fighting against the current that seemed determined to push him away. The small shape disappeared beneath the surface. Jake's chest tightened with panic. He took a huge breath and dove under. The current was brutal down here. It grabbed him immediately, pulling him toward the pipe like a hungry mouth. Jake didn't fight it. He let it take him, pulling himself hand over hand along the rocky bottom toward where he'd seen the cub go under. The drainage pipe loomed ahead, a dark circle in the murky water. The current was sucking everything into it. Jake's lungs were already starting to burn. He swept his arms through the water, searching blindly. Nothing. He pushed deeper into the pipe. The darkness swallowed him completely. He couldn't see anything now, just rushing water and shadows. His chest was screaming for air. Black spots danced at the edges of his vision. Jake swept his arms again, wider this time. His hand hit the rough concrete of the pipe wall. Then nothing. Then fur. Soft, wet fur. His fingers closed around something small and limp. Jake pulled it close to his chest and kicked hard, trying to reverse direction. But the current had him now. It was pulling him deeper into the pipe, away from the light, away from air. Panic clawed at his throat. He was going to drown in here. They both were. No. No way. Not after coming this far. Jake planted his feet against one wall of the pipe and pushed with everything he had. His boots found purchase on the slippery concrete. He pushed again, launching himself backward, kicking frantically toward the dim light at the pipe's entrance. His lungs were on fire. His vision was narrowing to a tunnel. Just a few more feet. Just a little further. The light grew brighter. Jake kicked one more time and burst through the surface, gasping and choking. Water streamed from his nose and mouth. He held the tiny bundle against his chest with one arm while he struggled to keep both their heads above water. The current tried to pull him back. Jake swam one-handed toward the shore, his movements sloppy and desperate. Hands reached out and pulled him onto the mud. He collapsed onto his hands and knees, still holding the cub. For a moment, all Jake could do was breathe. His whole body shook. Water dripped from his hair and clothes. Then he looked down at what he was holding. The cub was tiny, maybe the size of a house cat. Midnight blue spots dotted its silver fur, just like its mother. But it wasn't moving. Its small chest was still. "Oh God," Jake whispered. "No, please no." The mother Felkari made that sound again. It was worse this time, a noise that was half roar and half sob, a sound of grief so raw it made everyone on the shore take a step back. Jake laid the cub down gently on the mud. His hands were shaking badly now, from cold and exhaustion and fear. The tiny body was so small under his palms. So fragile. The crowd had grown. More workers, more aliens. They formed a circle around Jake and the cub, watching in complete silence. Someone whispered that he shouldn't be touching it. That Felkari cubs were sacred, protected, forbidden to outsiders. Jake didn't care about any of that. He placed his fingers on the cub's small chest, found what he hoped was the heart, and started compressions. Gentle ones, barely more than firm pressure. The chest was so tiny he was terrified of breaking ribs. "Come on, little one," he murmured. "Come on." He did 30 compressions, then bent down and breathed softly into the cub's small mouth. Nothing. He went back to compressions, counting under his breath, refusing to give up. The cub's body jerked suddenly. It coughed, a tiny sound, and water dribbled from its mouth. Then it coughed again, harder this time. Jake turned it on its side, supporting its head. More water came up. The cub's small chest started moving, taking short, rapid breaths. Its eyes opened. 6 tiny golden eyes, exact copies of its mother's, focusing slowly on Jake's face. The cub mewed. A soft, kitten-like sound. Jake let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Relief washed over him so powerfully his eyes stung with tears. "There you go. That's it. Breathe." The crowd hadn't made a sound. No one moved. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. The mother Felkari rose slowly to her feet. She was still unsteady, still dripping wet, but she moved with purpose now. She approached Jake step by careful step. Everyone tensed. Jake heard someone behind him suck in a sharp breath. He knew what they were thinking. Felkari were fiercely protective of their young. Instinctively violent toward anyone who threatened their cubs. And here was Jake, a human, holding her baby. Jake looked up at the massive alien looming over him. He was exhausted. Bleeding. Couldn't run even if he wanted to. The Felkari stared down at him with all 6 golden eyes. Then, slowly, she lowered her great head until her forehead nearly touched the ground. She was bowing to him. Jake stared up at the massive Felkari bowing before him, his mind struggling to process what was happening. His clothes were soaked, his arm was still bleeding, and he was pretty sure he'd swallowed half the lake. But none of that explained why an apex predator was bowing to him. The Felkari's translator collar crackled to life, a small device embedded in the silver fur around her neck. When she spoke, her voice came through in perfect standard English, but it was shaking with emotion. "You saved Crown Heir Myra," she said softly. "You saved my daughter. You saved the future of Felkara Prime." Jake blinked hard, water still dripping from his hair into his eyes. "Crown Heir? I don't, wait, what?" The Felkari carefully took the small cub from Jake's arms, cradling the tiny body against her chest. The baby mewed and snuggled into her mother's fur, already looking stronger. The mother's whole body seemed to relax at the touch. Then she looked back at Jake with all 6 golden eyes, and he saw something in them he never expected to see from a Felkari. "Tez. I am Empress Kara of the Felkari Empire," she said quietly. "And this is my daughter, Myra, heir to the throne of Felkara Prime." The crowd around them exploded into noise. Shocked gasps, excited whispers, people pulling out communication devices. Tommy grabbed Jake's shoulder so hard it hurt. "Did she just say Empress?" someone shouted. "That's the leader of the Felkari Empire." "Holy hell, we just let an Empress almost drown." Jake's head was spinning. Empress? He just saved the leader of one of the most powerful military empires in the galaxy? The same empire that humanity had been trying to establish trade relations with for 5 years? "I don't understand," Jake said, his voice hoarse. "What were you doing here? Why were you in the lake?" Kara's expression darkened. She held Myra closer. "I was traveling in disguise. No royal markings, no guards, no announcement. I wanted to see your human colony for myself, to understand your people before we made any decisions about formal relations." She paused, her jaw tightening. "But someone found out. There was an attack. Traitors within my own military, those who do not want peace with humans. They sabotaged my shuttle as I flew over your lake." The engines failed. We crashed into the water. Jake looked at the lake, at the dam outlet where he pulled them from. He hadn't seen any shuttle. It must have sunk already, pulled down by the current. The impact knocked me unconscious for a moment, Kara continued. When I woke, we were being pulled toward that pipe. I tried to swim, but the current was too strong. I was drowning. And Myra. Her voice broke. Myra had been thrown from my arms. I could not reach her. I could not save my own daughter. She looked at Jake again, and this time there was something fierce in her eyes. And then you came. A human. A stranger. You jumped into deadly water to save someone you did not know. Someone whose species has never shown yours anything but coldness. Jake shook his head. She was drowning. Anyone would have. No, Kara interrupted firmly. No, they would not. Look around you. Jake turned and saw the crowd of workers still watching. Their faces showed shock, excitement, fear. But Kara was right. Not one of them had jumped in to help. They'd all just watched. Kara's voice dropped lower, and what she said next made Jake's blood run cold. By ancient law, no outsider may touch a crown heir before they reach maturity. You are the first non-Fulkari in 10,000 years to do so. The color drained from Jake's face. I didn't know. I was just trying to help. I know, Kara said. But my people will not care about your intentions. This contact creates a bond under our oldest laws. A blood bond. Some will see this as sacred, an honor that proves humans are worthy of respect. She paused, and her next words came out heavy with dread. Others will see it as a violation that demands your death. Half my empire will want to honor you. The other half will want to kill you. Jake swallowed hard. His mouth had gone dry. She was drowning. She's a baby. I couldn't just let her die. I know, Kara said, and now her voice was almost gentle. That is exactly why you terrify half my empire. You risked your life for a creature you had never met. For a child of a species that has never shown your kind kindness. You expected no reward, no recognition. You simply saw a life that needed saving and you acted. Little Myra stirred in her mother's arms. She lifted her small head and looked at Jake with sleepy eyes. Then she did something that made the entire crowd gasp. She reached out one tiny paw toward him, making a soft chirping sound. Kara's expression became grim. My military is coming. They will have detected the shuttle crash by now. When they arrive, everything changes. For both our species. For you most of all. Jake looked up at the sky. At first he saw nothing but the bright afternoon suns and a few clouds. Then he saw them. Dark shapes dropping through the atmosphere, getting bigger by the second. Dozens of them. Felkari warships, bristling with weapons, descending on the colony like birds of prey. The crowd saw them too. People started backing away, murmuring nervously. Someone yelled that they should evacuate. Jake just stood there, dripping wet and bleeding, watching the warships come. He'd woken up this morning thinking his biggest problem would be adjusting water pH levels. Now he was apparently at the center of an intergalactic incident that could start a war. And all because he'd done the one thing that felt natural. The one thing any decent person would do. He'd saved a life. The Felkari warships came down like a storm of metal and fury. They surrounded the colony completely, blocking out sections of the sky. Jake had never seen anything like them. Each ship was the size of a city block, angular and aggressive, covered in weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Within an hour, Felkari soldiers had secured the entire area. They moved like liquid shadows, fast and precise. Jake was taken from the lakeside, still soaking wet, still bleeding from the claw marks on his arm. Nobody told him where they were going. Nobody told him anything. Now he stood in the flagship's tribunal chamber, and he'd never felt smaller in his life. The room was massive, designed for beings much larger than humans. The ceiling stretched up at least 50 feet. Around him stood dozens of Felkari, each one towering over his 6-foot frame. Their golden eyes watched him with expressions he couldn't read. Some looked curious. Others looked hostile. All of them looked dangerous. The tribunal council sat on a raised platform ahead of him. 7 Felkari, each one clearly important based on the ceremonial armor they wore. Empress Kara sat in the center, holding little Myra, who was wrapped in some kind of thermal blanket. The cub was sleeping now, peaceful and safe. But the Felkari standing to Kara's left was anything but peaceful. He was massive, even for a Felkari. Probably 9 feet tall, with scars running across his silver fur like he'd survived 100 battles. His eyes were cold and hard. When he spoke, His voice filled the chamber like thunder. "I am Commander Drake of the Fifth Fleet," he announced. "And I say this human represents a threat to the Empire that cannot be tolerated." He pointed one long claw directly at Jake. "He knows the Crown Heir's vulnerabilities. He has seen her weakness. He has touched royal blood with unworthy hands. He must be eliminated." The chamber erupted with voices. Some Felkari roared in agreement. Others looked uncertain. Kara stood up, and the noise died down. She handed Myra to an attendant and stepped forward, her whole body radiating barely controlled anger. "He saved her life." Kara snarled, her voice sharp as broken glass. "My daughter would be dead without him. Our future would be dead." Drake's scarred face twisted. "He touched her," he roared back, loud enough to make Jake's ears ring. "Ancient law is clear, Your Majesty. Only proven warriors of the Felkari blood may handle the royal line before they reach maturity. He is an outsider. A human. They are weak, emotional, irrational. He violated 10,000 years of tradition." Half the tribunal roared their approval, slamming their claws against the metal floor in a deafening rhythm. The other half remained silent, but Jake could see the uncertainty in their faces. They didn't know what to do with him. Drake continued, his voice dropping to something more dangerous. "He must face trial by combat, as our laws demand. Or he must be executed immediately. There is no other option." Jake's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Trial by combat. Against a Felkari warrior. He'd be dead in seconds. He'd seen training videos of Felkari combat. They moved faster than human eyes could follow. Their claws could cut through steel. But if he refused, they'd execute him anyway. And worse, this could start a war. The Felkari Empire versus the human colonies. Thousands would die. Jake took a step forward. His legs felt like rubber, but he kept them steady. His voice came out quieter than he wanted, so he cleared his throat and tried again. "I'll do it." The chamber went silent. Every golden eye fixed on him. Kara whipped around to face him. "No," she said sharply. "Absolutely not. You'll die in seconds. You don't understand what you're agreeing to." Jake met her eyes. His hands were shaking, so he clenched them into fists to hide it. But his voice was steady when he spoke. "If it stops a war, I'll do it. I didn't save your daughter just to let people die fighting over me. If this is what it takes, then let's do it." The tribunal erupted into chaos. Felkari were shouting over each other, arguing, debating. Some called Jake brave. Others called him foolish. A few looked at him with something that might have been respect. Drake smiled, showing far too many teeth. The human accepts. The challenge is issued and accepted. By law, it must proceed. One of the other tribunal members leaned forward. "Commander, this is not necessary. We can find another solution." "There is no other solution." Drake slammed his claw down. He touched the Crown Heir. "Law demands satisfaction. Would you have us abandon our traditions? Our honor? Everything we are?" In another part of the ship, in the medical bay, little Myra was refusing to eat. The medical staff tried everything, but the cub just pushed the food away and made sad little chirping sounds. She kept looking at the door, waiting. "What's wrong with her?" one medic asked. The head physician checked her readings again. "Physically, she's fine. But she keeps asking for something. She keeps saying, 'Warm one who gave breath.'" The medics looked at each other. They knew what that meant. The cub was asking for Jake. The human who'd saved her life. The one who was about to die in the arena. Back in the tribunal chamber, Drake's cold smile grew wider. "Prepare the arena. At sunset, the human dies. Let this be a lesson to all who would violate our sacred laws." Two guards stepped forward and took Jake by the arms. Their grip was firm but not cruel. As they led him away, Jake looked back once at Kara. The Empress looked devastated, angry, and completely powerless. The chamber doors closed behind him with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. News of the trial spread through the Felkari fleet in minutes. Then through their empire in hours. Before long, the entire galaxy knew. A human had saved the Felkari Crown Heir and was now going to die for it. The galaxy watched and waited. And in his holding cell, Jake sat on a cold metal bench, trying not to think about sunset. The arena was carved into the belly of the flagship, a massive circular space designed for Felkari combat. Jake stood in the center, feeling incredibly small and incredibly human. The floor was some kind of metal alloy, scarred with claw marks from thousands of previous fights. Above him, Viewing platforms ringed the arena, packed with Felkari soldiers watching in silence. Jake was unarmed. That was tradition, apparently. The accused faces the champion with nothing but their own strength. Fair combat, they called it. Jake called it a death sentence. Across from him, Drake's chosen champion stretched. The warrior was built like a tank, all muscle and controlled violence. His claws extended slowly, each one the length of a knife blade, gleaming under the harsh arena lights. He rolled his massive shoulders and smiled at Jake with too many teeth. The crowd began to roar. A deep, rhythmic sound that shook Jake's chest. This was entertainment for them. Watching a human get torn apart. It would be over in seconds. Everyone knew it. Jake's hands were sweating. His heart hammered against his ribs. He'd faced danger before, sure. Machinery accidents, equipment failures, the normal risks of colony life. But he'd never faced something designed to kill him. Something that wanted to kill him. He thought about his sister back on Earth. About his nephew who loved hearing stories about space. About the lake he'd worked 3 years to build. All the things he'd never see again. The champion began to move forward, slow and confident. Then a door at the side of the arena burst open. A small figure stumbled through, moving unsteadily on legs that were still learning to work properly. The crowd's roar cut off like someone had hit a switch. Myra. The tiny crown heir ran toward the center of the arena, her baby legs carrying her as fast as they could. An attendant rushed after her, but stopped at the arena's edge, not daring to enter during a sanctioned trial. Myra reached Jake and planted herself directly between him and the champion warrior. She spread her small arms wide, trying to make herself as big as possible. It would have been adorable if the situation wasn't so terrifying. The champion stopped mid-step, looking confused and horrified. Myra's baby voice rang out across the silent arena, clear and loud. He gave me his breath. He bled for me. His blood is my blood. First law. Blood bond of the first den. Jake stared down at the cub in shock. He had no idea what she was saying, but judging by the reaction from the crowd, it was important. The arena had gone completely silent. Thousands of Felkari, the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy, struck speechless by a baby's words. Even Drake looked shocked, his scarred face frozen in disbelief. That's a myth, someone whispered from the viewing platforms. The first law hasn't been invoked in thousands of years. Empress Kara stepped forward from her seat, moving to the edge of the platform. And Jake saw something he never expected to see. Tears. Actual tears running down the face of the most powerful ruler in the Felkari Empire. Something that, according to everything he'd heard, never happened. Felkari didn't cry. It's not a myth, Kara said, her voice thick with emotion. The first law is older than our empire. Older than our written history. It comes from the ancient dens, when our people first learned what it meant to be more than animals. She looked down at her daughter, standing so small and brave in the center of the arena. And my daughter speaks truth. He gave her his breath when death came for her. He bled his own blood to save hers. By the oldest law of our people, his blood is now her blood. They are bonded. The champion warrior looked at Myra, then at Jake, then slowly, deliberately, he knelt. His claws retracted. He placed one massive hand over his heart and bowed his head. I cannot strike the crown heir, he said quietly. Not even to reach another. The blood bond protects him now. Drake stood up on the platform, his face twisted with rage. This is madness. You cannot. The first law stands above all others, Kara interrupted, her voice ringing with authority. Even above yours, Commander. Even above mine. Around the arena, Felkari began to kneel. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. Drake's supporters, the ones who'd wanted Jake dead, lowered themselves one by one. Some looked relieved. Others looked awed. None of them could stand against the oldest law of their people. Drake stood alone, still standing, but Jake could see the rebellion dying in his eyes. He'd lost. Not through combat, but through something more powerful. Through a child's love and ancient law. Finally, even Drake knelt. Kara descended from the platform and approached Jake. She knelt too, bringing herself to eye level with him. More tears streaked her face. You reminded us what we lost, she said softly. When we decided that strength was everything, that emotion was weakness, that mercy was for lesser species. We forgot that true warriors know when to be gentle. My daughter remembered what we forgot. She placed one hand on Jake's shoulder. You are the first guardian. The protector of the crown heir. Bonded by blood and breath. And through you, our peoples are bonded as well. Little Myra turned and hugged Jake's leg, making happy chirping sounds. Jake looked down at her, then at the thousands of kneeling Felkari, then at the Empress. He started laughing. He couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. He just wanted to test some water quality. 5 years later, Jake Porter walked through the doors of the Galactic Senate. He wore the formal robes of a human ambassador now, but also the silver sash of a Felkari guardian. The only non-Felkari in history to wear one. Beside him walked Crown Princess Myra. She was bigger now, nearly his height, elegant and fierce. But when she looked at him, her 6 golden eyes still held that same warmth from 5 years ago. "Ready for this, breath giver?" she asked quietly. Jake smiled. She still called him that. Always would. "Ready as I'll ever be." They walked in together to present the Unity Treaty. The colony on Kepler 442b had become a joint species city, where humans and Felkari lived and worked side by side. A symbol that 2 completely different peoples could find common ground. And Lake Meridian, the place where a human had jumped into deadly water for a stranger's child, had been renamed Lake Unity in every language of the galaxy. The treaty passed unanimously. Because the galaxy had finally learned what humans had always known. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is care.